to show you how to set up a cloth. So it has some really interesting folds and nice shadows for you to draw. First off, I'm going to use a pillowcase. I have a light colored pillowcase and I thought that would be really good. If you want to iron it first and get rid of some of those small wrinkles, that's a great idea. One way to hang it would be from one point. So if you're hanging it from one point, that would really be called a point of tension or a point of support. So you see, when you hang it from one point, you can kind of play around with it a little bit, but you don't have a whole lot of variation. Now, if you do want to hang it from one point, you may want to just take a little small push pin and stick it in the wall, and then kind of play around with your light and your shadows. And I would get the light pretty close. And what you want to do is find a few, play around with it a little bit so you have some interesting folds and some good cast shadows. So you can see these folds really look like cones, you know, right here. And you have a nice cast shadow here. But I'm not that happy with this particular setup. So another way that you could do it is by hanging it from 2 points of support or tension points, kind of like this. And I'm going to play around with that drape too. I'm going to play around with how the fabric drapes. And that's called, actually it's called like a diaper fold because it has 2 support points there. It reminds people of like a diaper. So now, in order to do that, if you can put push pins in your wall, that's great. Another way to go for this is you have some tape, and I have some packing tape that's pretty strong. You could probably use that packing tape to tape it onto your wall. So tape or push pins, I think I'm going to go with I'm going to go with push pins. But you want to make sure that, you know, it's okay to put push pins in your wall. Okay, so I think playing around with this, and you can see it involves a little bit of playing around. I don't want this to be like a flopping around. Maybe I'm going to hang it by the 2 corners. I think that might be good. And I saw some really interesting images, drawings online that were hung up at 2 corners. Now, the other thing to think about is, you know, what if this just looks too big and too floppy? You could take a little bit of that and like bend it back, fold it back, right? And then maybe have this drape a little bit more like that. Now, I was looking online and I kind of liked the drapes that had, I liked them when like one was lower than the other. You see how that's more interesting than that one single tension point was before. So now that I have this set up in a way that I'm pretty happy with it, I feel like it needs to be a little higher because it's sitting on the table, but then I realized, you know what, I can move my table for this. So for this particular drawing, yeah, you can just hang it on the wall. And you really don't need a table in front of it. Now, other options are to put a box on the table, drape it over a box. You could have an ironing board, and you could drape it over the ironing board. You could have a chair, drape your cloth over the chair. And, you know, now I'm just kind of playing around with the light, seeing how I like the light shadow, making sure that it's something that will be interesting to draw. And I'm pretty satisfied with that, so I'm going with that. Okay, so I hope that helped you a little bit, and have fun arranging your drapery. I want to show you how to sharpen your pencils with an X-Acto knife. Now, the reason we do this is because if you want to shade by using the side of your pencil and blocking in the value, instead of cross-hatching, you need to expose more of the graphite. So you can see what I'm doing here. I'm holding my pencil with my non-dominant hand, my left hand. Then I'm holding the X-Acto knife pretty close to the blade. My thumb is here, and as I'm working, I'm also using my thumb of my left hand, my non-dominant hand, to kind of guide as I carve the wood away. Now, as I carve the wood away, I'm carving down, but I'm also lifting up a little bit. And the reason I lift up a little bit is because I don't want to break off the graphite. So I'm trying to expose about, I would say about a 1/2 inch of graphite this way. And I could go faster because I've done this a lot. My grandfather used to do this. All of the pencils in my grandparents' house were like sharpened and he would use like his little pocket knife to sharpen them. Anyway, I kind of like doing this. I like whittling away the wood. All right, so then you expose the graphite, right? And you can see you don't have really a good point. There's a couple ways you can get a decent point. One way is just using a handheld sharpener. And all I'm going to do with this handheld sharpener is very lightly sharpen the point. Now this works, I think, pretty well with graphite pencils. With charcoal pencils, I usually use sandpaper if I want to get them really sharp, because they have a tendency to break easier, the charcoal ones, in the handheld sharpener. But usually the graphite ones work pretty well. So there you go. Now another pencil I haven't really talked about yet is a carpenter's pencil. You can see this is from the Home Depot. Now the nice thing about a carpenter's pencil is, I'll show you, it's really cool. So I'm sharpening this one like this, and now my husband actually just picked up some of these at the Home Depot. He said they were 19 cents. It's pretty cheap, available in the tool department. So as I'm whittling this away, what you're going to see, hello, so you're going to see that I actually have this like wide tip of graphite. So I don't sharpen it to a point, but I would instead use it as kind of a wedge shape. So again, I'm just carving the wood out of there. This wood they use is pretty hard too. So, and I'm pushing the knife down and then kind of pulling it up because I don't want to cut off any of that graphite on the end. And of course, you always carve away from away from your hands, right? Whenever you're using a knife, you always have to like keep that in mind. Like, where are your hands? Don't carve into your hands. Always carve away. There it is. See that? How cool is that? So that can make a nice kind of thick mark because it's not a tip. It's like wide. You can buy also pencils that have no wood or woodless graphite, or you can also buy graphite sticks. So they're all good options for shading, especially when you want to block in larger areas to get started. Before you start this drawing, I really need to tell you about something important. It's something that we artists do with our eyes. A couple things. And you might think it's a little strange, but here goes. First off, whenever you're working on a tonal drawing or a painting, laying out a painting that has good light and shadow, chiaroscuro, what you need to do in the beginning is to see the general shapes of the lights and the shadows. You need to simplify it. So in order to work general to specific, you don't want to get caught up in details. And here's a trick. What you can do is, if you wear glasses and you're nearsighted like me, you can take off your glasses so that everything gets a little blurry. Now, if you are blessed with 20/20 vision, that's not going to work. So what you're going to need to do is squint. Yes, that's what I said, squint. Yeah, so if you're looking at your drapery and you need to just see the basic shapes of the light and shadow and you don't want to get caught up in details, squint. So that's my helpful hint. Now there's one other thing that you need to be very aware of that you do with your eyes when you draw, okay? And no, you don't open it really big like I'm doing right now. But here's what you do. Whenever you are sighting, whenever you're sighting, checking angles or doing measuring, you've got to do it with one eye shut. Got to have one eye shut or you'll be seeing double. Okay, so those are my helpful hints before you get started. Now it's time to lay out the drapery. When I'm laying out the drapery, I start my drawing the way I start all my drawings. I look through a viewfinder. Looking through a viewfinder helps me use my imagination to visualize what my drawing will look like on my paper. It also helps me scale it. I start by dropping vertical to see if that cloth on the left is truly vertical, and it's not. It slants out a little bit. And now I'm looking at the angle from where the pin's holding it, and I'm transferring that angle, and you can see me put that in. Now, when you're drawing drapery, there are a lot of curves, but when you're drawing a curve, you want to get the angle right first. So I always start out with angles. Now here I'm looking at the imaginary angle between the two forms that are pinned up. And that's really important to get that correct as well. Now I'm transferring another angle for the right side of the cloth. So I'm getting in the basic shape, the large shape of the entire form. I'm placing it on the picture plane. Okay, so once I do that, I've got my drawing scaled. I know how big it's going to be on the picture plane. Now I am blocking in the shapes of the shadows and the folds. And I'm doing that just with a gestural line. You can see for this entire time I'm holding my pencil far back, and I'm really drawing with my arm. So really want to look at how I'm doing that. Here I'm transferring an angle again. At this point, it's for that triangular shape of the drape in the middle. And that's the thing that I really liked most about this diaper drapery, is that triangles in the center really give a nice variation of different shapes of the folds. You can see the two cone-like folds on either side, on the right and the left, and then the triangle folds in the middle. I thought that was really kind of exciting. You can see also kind of a big U shape on just going through the whole form there. And so I continue to draw the shapes of the shadows. Now I'm drawing the shape of the cast shadow. And I'm looking at the negative spaces as I'm doing that. You know, that always helps. And here, again, just blocking in that shape of the cast shadow, which is a little different than that imaginary angle between the two points there. And I'm ready to start blocking in the shadows. I'm taking my glasses off. It's a very exciting moment. And I am going to start squinting. You'll see me squint too, because luckily my eyes aren't too bad, and so I do actually have to squint a little bit to see blurry enough for this step. Now I start off using a 3B pencil, but what I find is that I wanted to use the side of it to block in the shadows instead of using fine lines and hatching and cross-hatching like I was showing you in the other drawings. And this pencil just wasn't really doing it for me. And so I decide, after playing around with it, that I'm going to switch it up to the 4B. I wanted a softer pencil, and I found that much better. You can see already it's a little bit darker. So what I'm doing here is I am using a 4B pencil to block in all the shapes of the shadows, and I want to block in just the general shapes. And in this type of drawing, you work general to specific, actually in all types of drawings, except for contour line drawings, and that's very different, but we're past that now, right? So now here I am, I'm blocking in basic shapes of the shadows with the side of a 4B pencil. And I'm really not paying any attention to the variation of the lightness and the darkness of the shadows. That will wait till later, okay? So this is a really different way to start than I showed you with the sphere and also with the toilet paper. With those drawings, we built up values gradually, starting with the H and then the HB, the B, the 2B, the 3B, 4B, and then finally 6B, right? This is different. We're starting with the midtone, blocking in all the basic shapes of shadows with the midtones. What we're doing is something called establishing the pattern of light and shadow. It's an extremely important concept to understand whenever you're drawing or painting something that has a good, strong light source, something with that chiaroscuro type of lighting. So establishing the pattern of light and shadow. It'll make, if you do this first with your drawings, it'll make them stronger, more dynamic, and also this will help you too when you transition into learning painting, whether it's oil painting or watercolor, or whether you're painting on a computer, working digitally. So I'm continuing to looking at those shapes of the shadows, and you can kind of compare the shapes that I'm blocking in to the photo, and I'm almost finished. It took me this whole process, and I did not speed up this video. I know it looks like I'm working fast, but I actually do work that fast. But remember, I've been doing this for 4 decades. You guys are just starting out.